Welcome to the greatest podcast in sports betting entertainment. My name is Tanner Kern, certified G, bona fide stud, and you can't teach that. And this right here, this is G Money Grant Mitchell. He is here from England with all the fish and chips, and you can't teach that. Bada boom. Man, the people in the room. G Money Grant Mitchell. The Florida Gators are champions. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Tanner. I'm full of energy, back from England, like you said. Weather over there, beautiful. I was fully expecting the traditional British cold, rain, wind. Didn't get any of that. It was 60, 65, clear skies, sunny for an entire week. So I'm feeling refreshed, rejuvenated. Got that feeling you get like when you come back from the beach almost, just because I spent so much time in the sun. Obviously, while I was over there, it did make watching the Final Four and all the other games a little more complicated. Stayed up until 4:30 a.m. to watch that Duke-Houston game, but it was absolutely worth it. And watching last night's national championship was worth it if you're a Florida fan. If you're a Houston fan, I don't know how much worse it gets.
I had a ticket on Florida to win the national title. I don't even feel like I won. Like, I'm kind of in shock today that they found a way to win the game and pull through. And, give credit to Florida. Houston, I wouldn't say Houston collapsed down the stretch. They did not play their game down the stretch, but the Florida Gators found a way to just take it from them, where I feel more so in that Duke-Houston game, Duke really collapsed. I don't know if you have that same opinion.
I would say that Houston collapsed as well. I mean, and in both cases, the Duke-Houston game and the Florida-Houston game, because one team collapsed, the door was opened. The other team still had to go through it, right? Like Houston had to come back from 14 points. Florida had to make that late run. So they deserve credit for it. But when you look at Houston's final 4 possessions in the final minute and a half, and they were all turnovers, they didn't get a shot up in the final minute and a half. And that last play, the Kelvin Sampson haters won, because that is probably the worst last play that I have seen ever watching a high-stakes basketball game. They inbounded the ball with 20 seconds left. They were not pressed for time. That's, more than half of a full shot clock. They walk the ball up the court. There's no urgency. Once the LJ Cryer crosses half court, he stands there for 4 to 5 seconds. Nothing going on. We're just draining the clock down. There's no sort of action. There's no dives, no cuts, nothing towards the basket. They're treating this like they're down 3 points. They were down 2. They could have just taken the tie and gone to overtime. And so Florida just switched everything, kept them in front of them, guarded the 3-point line. And when Florida's got 5 guys on the perimeter, it doesn't surprise me that Houston wasn't able to get a shot off. And Sharp actually did the right thing by not shooting that ball, because it would have just gotten blocked. But at that point, the possession was over and the game was lost anyway.
Yeah, Gator boys stay hot. We're going to talk about national championship today. We're going to break down what Grant just said. But before we do that, make sure you head over to WSN.com, link down the bio. Check out all the sportsbook promos we got for you guys there. FanDuel, Caesars, BetMGM, you name it. You can get bonus bets on all of them. And on top of that, you need to subscribe to the show, because this is the show that you need to watch moving forward for NBA news, MLB news, betting, football, you name it. We got it here. Ride the line, smash the subscribe button. Grant, Houston's not built to compete. I learned that last night. Houston is not built to compete. That team, the way they are assembled, as is not a championship level basketball team.
So in years past, they have not been, and I've been higher on Houston than a lot of people, but I've been proven wrong. I'm not going to say I was wrong this time, because when you beat Duke, who people were talking about, is this the best college team ever, at least of the modern era? When you're able to beat them and you don't allow them to make more than 2 shots over the final 13 minutes of the game, sure, you went down big, but you came back. In this game, they had the lead almost the entire time. They had it up to 12 points, I believe. And this was the best offensive team that Houston has had in this Kelvin Sampson era. Probably the best offensive team since the 5 Slamma-Jamma days, where they got the back-to-back runner-up in the national championships. Look, some teams are just cursed. And I don't know if that's what applies to Houston. They've been to 3 natties. They lost all 3. But it's just, I don't know how you look yourself in the mirror this morning, particularly, again, if you are Kelvin Sampson. Because when you have a chance with 20 seconds left, you have the ball. Florida's not bringing pressure. They're not trying to force a turnover. Like, just take the shot. If it's not the best shot in the world, obviously that's what you want. But if it's not the best shot in the world, you're the best offensive rebounding team in this tournament. you have a chance to go get the ball. And if you miss it and Florida gets it, foul them. Florida had missed some free throws late in that game. So maybe they go 1 of 2, you're down 3, and you get another shot to tie the game and send it to overtime.
Well, it depends who you foul too. If you foul a center, they're going to miss their free throws, but the other dudes are money down the stretch. My biggest thing is Houston is not built to compete because of what we saw last night. I don't think you can grit your way to a national championship in this era. I really don't, because Florida played terrible in the first half. They were atrocious. They turned the ball over. Walter Clayton didn't score, and Clayton still had the assist. He played good defense last night. But overall, Walter Clayton did not do anything from a scoring perspective till late in the game. Made some big shots down the stretch and did not stop shooting, which was very impressive. But Houston cannot grit their way to a title. Florida played terrible. Florida played terrible pretty much the entire game, and Houston couldn't find a way to run away with it. And also, too, I thought the Cougars were much better from two-point range than they have been. They had a much better mid-range offense last night. The three-pointer did not keep them in or win the game for them. Obviously, they didn't win, but the two-point offense was pretty solid down low for them, and they just couldn't find a way to get it done because when Florida started to play their game, it just took over. So I think you can grit your way to a title, but you need elite scorers, and you can't play slow tempo, and you can't just suffocate teams because it doesn't work over a big stretch in the tournament. And they met their match in this one against Florida.
Yeah, and they actually, when Florida started to come back, or I think they might have tied the game after being down by 12, Houston then went on like a mini burst. They went up by like 5-6 points, and it was because they played in transition, which is not something they do. Of 360 teams, they're 350 something in pace, but they actually did find success late in that second half by playing with tempo. So I do wonder if that's something that Kelvin Sampson looks at, coming back. LJ Cryer, I believe he's done. I know he played 5 years, 3 at Baylor, 2 at Houston. So I think he's done, but I don't know these days. Like Chad Baker-Mazara apparently might be coming back for Auburn for his 17th season. So we'll have to figure that out. But what I find so interesting about Florida is they didn't play a good game in this whole tournament. They survived off of bursts. They had an uncharacteristic turnover problem. They didn't shoot free throws well. They were down very late against Texas Tech. Only beat UConn by 2. Losing to Maryland, I believe, at half, or if they weren't losing, they were just ahead. They survived off of these runs. And you want to talk about ways that you can and can't win a championship. You were talking about you can't grit your way to a championship. I didn't think you would win a championship just off of runs. I didn't think you could try to like knuckle under and then have these 3-4 minute bursts and that could get you through a whole tournament. But that's exactly what Florida did. So in hindsight, looking back out at it, on one hand, I'm thinking to myself, Florida really never played a complete game in this tournament. They're probably lucky to have won. But then on the other, I'm thinking, they didn't come anywhere close to playing their best, and they won. So what would have happened if they put that complete game together?
Well, Houston played their best game last night until the final few minutes. Like that was the prototypical Houston basketball game that can win a national championship for you. But Florida, when they went on those runs, it was more deadly than Houston playing slow. When teams play with pace, when you get out in transition, you're going to be more deadly. Like Florida, again, like you said, they were terrible the entire tournament. There were a lot of stretches where Florida didn't look good. Now, after watching Florida this entire tournament with money on them, so a little different, you watch it a little differently. Like last night when they had the chance to take the lead multiple times down the stretch after they tie the game up, it's Elijah Martin chucking up a 3. It's Walter Clayton chucking up a logo 3. And Grant, he did make one, but it's just logo 3, no setting up the offense, none of that. And I'm getting frustrated in the moment, but and then I sit back and I'm like, this is the reason they're here. Playing in transition, taking these wild shots. Walter Clayton behind the back pass. It was early in the game, and they just had a miscommunication. And I'm like, what are you doing? But that is why they are here. They play street ball. There's not a lot of organization. You can tell when Todd Golden's sitting there, he's not calling offense. It's let the best player get the ball and go shoot it. Now, credit Florida for taking all these mid-major kids and assembling them into a national championship caliber team. And they did that through analytics. But when they're on the floor, this is as street ball as it gets. It's play in transition. It's let your best guys go out and make plays.
It reminds me of what the Indiana Pacers did a lot of last year. And I remember an interview with Rick Carlisle. I think it might have been with JJ Redick before a game or a broadcast or something. And Rick Carlisle basically said, we don't really run plays. I don't really call plays. We have concepts. Players know the general area they're supposed to be in. We know if we're getting this sort of look, these are the types of shots we want to look for. These are our shot profiles. But really, once we get the ball, we get it to Tyrese Halliburton. He pushes it down the court. We're across half court within 2 to 3 seconds, and we're straight into the offense. That's what Florida reminds me of.
Yeah, and bursts are deadly, and we saw that. And I personally don't think you can win a championship. And Houston has proven this time and time again. You can't win a championship with just grit. Like, I get it. You're diving on the floor at practice for balls. Like you saw that clip on Twitter going viral yesterday. That was wild. That's intensity. Credit to Alex Condon last night diving for that final ball. He is terrible, by the way. Alex Condon.
He was nervous.
He looked nervous the entire tournament. Like, there was not a time. And when I think there was like a minute and a half, 2 minutes left. And, Florida's down 1. They got the chance to go out and take the lead, right? Why is Alex Condon shooting the ball from the low post? He hasn't made a shot all night down there. What are we doing? I was like, I saw it. Condon's backing down, pivot, whatever, then a little fade away. Like, that's not going to work. He can't make a shot. He looked nervous. He made some big plays. Don't get me wrong, but the bad plays and just the dumb plays outweighed the good plays the entire tournament.
Yeah, again, it goes back to some of what we were talking about with Florida, though. Like, they did not play well in this tournament, aside from Walter Clayton Jr., really. I mean, you got to give that kid credit. But at halftime of this game, Walter Clayton had 0 points. Elijah Martin had 2 points. It was only a 3-point deficit. Maybe that should have been an indication that, this is Florida's game to go win if they're able to finally put together that burst that they have in every game this tournament. And they did it, and they won.
Yeah, Alex Condon seems nervous with the ball in his hands all the time. He needs to get a little more muscle on him. Will Richard last night, fantastic. He was kind of the Walter Clayton of the first half. He kept them in the game, and you could make the case, well, Clayton didn't score, but Richard hadn't done that the whole tournament, so it kind of balances out. And then Houston had every opportunity to go out in this game. When they were up 12, I said this is probably over because it's really hard to come back against a team like this. But then you sit back and think about it. Well, Florida hadn't done anything good the entire night to the last few minutes like they had done the whole tournament. I got some tweets here, Grant, about their comebacks. It's actually pretty impressive. This one comes from College Basketball Report of all their comebacks throughout the tournament. And let me pull it up here. Trailed by 3 to UConn with 4 minutes to go. Trailed by 9 to Texas Tech with 3 minutes to go. 8 to Auburn at halftime. And then 12 to Houston with 16:24 to go. The most impressive win to me was that Texas Tech game, but Houston was right up there with it.
To kind of circle back to your main point here, which is that this Houston team can't win championships playing like this. This game from Houston was the Houston that we've seen in years past, because Houston led the nation in 3-point percentage this year. They were shooting 40.3% from 3 in this tournament, had been right at like 38, 39, 40% in pretty much every single game. In this game, they go 6 of 25 for 24%. And when they don't shoot like that, this was the most dynamic offensive team Kelvin Sampson had. But when they don't have that 3 ball, they're just like the Houston teams of years past, which we know never got over the hump.
But tip your cap to Florida. They play great perimeter defense. And that's why I think they were eaten up a little bit inside too. And granted, when Alex Condon is playing inside, you're going to get eaten up a little bit. Like, he's not going to make every play. He's not super athletic. He's not physical enough to go out and make plays. But Florida emphasized the perimeter. And some of the threes that Houston even made last night, they were wild, 6 feet beyond the line, 3-pointers over players. You got to give Florida credit for how they played defense and just how they've played in this tournament. I don't know how they won the national championship. I watched this team, and there's a graphic that goes around, a little meme. It's a little aggressive, so we don't have to talk about it. But it's like, oh, Florida plays today. Oh, I don't feel good, and it's a little more intense than that. And then it's like, oh, Florida won. Like, it's kind of like this cycle of just how the emotions you have experience when you're watching the Florida Gators. And it's so true that you think they're going to lose every game. They play terrible throughout it, and then they find a way to go on a burst and win the game. It's wild.
I wonder what this does for Walter Clayton's draft stock. Because, I mean, he's a 22-year-old, 6'2" guard with not amazing athleticism. Nobody really knew about him until this year. Obviously, he's a first-team All-American. But, we've seen situations where there are terrific college players that do nothing in the NBA. Janai Broom, I don't don't think he's going to do much in the NBA. Luka Garza was a player of the year. He can't get out of the G League. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen to Walter Clayton Jr., but when you see someone win a championship like this, be the most outstanding player, have the first player since Larry Bird to score 30 points in the Elite Eight and Final Four, you would think that guy is going to be like a top 3 draft pick, but there's pretty much no way that happens. He probably won't even be a lottery pick.
Well, they were saying, like, I think he's going to Magic at 25. That's where a lot of people have him going potentially. And then also there's some people projecting him to go early second round. I saw The Athletic had that, but I don't think we can get caught up in the tournament. A lot of analysts come out and say, well, this guy's a lottery pick now, or this guy's a first round pick. I don't think this 5-game stretch in the tournament should do anything. We've seen, great guards have great tournaments and not do anything in college. I think back to like Shabazz Napier, who had a really dominant tournament run, obviously did not make it in the NBA. Jimmer Fredette, that was a guy who had a really dominant tournament run, didn't make it in the NBA. So there's these indications that, they're going to have great careers through a 5-game stretch in the NCAA tournament. And that's just, or a 6-game stretch, whatever. And that's just not the case. It doesn't necessarily translate to the NBA. I think Walter Clayton's cold. I think he's a dog. He's a guy that, if I'm him, I wouldn't mind going to the Magic at 25 because I'm going to be on a better team and I got a chance to win. It's kind of like Baylor Shireman with the Celtics.
That's a funny pull because I'm just totally random. But a buddy of mine texted a group chat we had maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he said, "Guys, for the rest of the season, Baylor Shireman overs. The Celtics are not going to be. They're going to be resting guys. They're not going to be playing heavy minutes. They're going to get the bench involved." And the day he sent that text, like Tatum was out, Porzingis was out, Baylor Shireman had 20 points, went 6 of 7 from 3. And so this is just funny you said that.
He's a dog. Baylor Shireman's he's a dog. He's got tattoos.
He looks literally nothing like he did in college.
No, it was a complete turnaround. It's pretty wild with him, and credit Baylor Shireman. But that's the Walter Clayton vision I have. I see him going to a more of a contender and not being that lottery pick. I don't know if he's a lottery pick. I really don't. And I saw a tweet. I forget who it was from, but teams that wouldn't pick Walter Clayton with a lottery pick are the reason they're drafting in the lottery. And I don't know if that's true or not, because we don't know how Walter Clayton is going to progress and be in the NBA. He sure had a hell of a tournament run and he kept Florida alive. But is Walter Clayton shooting the crazy shots from 6 feet beyond the arc going to work out? Like, is he going to be the next Steph Curry? And if he's not, I'm probably not drafting him with a lottery pick.
No, but I understand what the tweet is saying, though, which is that a lot of time teams who, when you're picking first, you typically have a good idea of who you're going for. Second, third, usually around there. It's teams picking in like the 5, 6, 7, 8 range, where it's kind of like, okay, what do? We got to swing for a guy who might have all the potential in the world, but then actually ends up doing nothing. So we're going to pass on this known commodity who doesn't have an all-star ceiling, but could be a good role player. Well, a good role player is not going to help the Washington Wizards. A good role player is not going to help the Utah Jazz. So that's how you get these talented guys, whether they played, let's say they played in Australia or they're 22, 23 years old in the draft, whatever. That's how you get these guys slipping down. And then a contender looks around and says, well, we have our star. We have our complementary star. We do need this one specialist in our rotation. And here he is right here, Walter Clayton Jr. We need a guy to come play 18 minutes a night, knock down some threes, be able to pass the ball a little bit, lead the second unit, and just have a green light there. Bam, we'll take him at 26, and that helps our team right now.
No, if he slides to that point in the draft, I think he's going to really help a team. But I don't know what his ceiling is to what his floor is. And obviously NBA scouts probably would rather look for, physical traits and ceiling rather than saying, well, this guy's here and arrived right now, but this may be the best we ever see him at. And I think for Walter Clayton too, there's some decision-making issues. Like last night early in the game, your shot's not falling. Don't force your shot. Set your offense up a little bit. And he did that as the game progressed, but early on, and, early enough too, though, where you knew he wasn't firing on all cylinders, stop taking logo threes, stop pulling up and shooting right away. We don't need that. That's not the flow of the game right now. Get in, run a little bit of an offense and get the guys going that are hot, like Will Richard. And he did that later on, but early that was a concern for me with his decision-making because his shot wasn't falling and he was taking such bad looks.
Kind of just to go back to what I was saying there, I looked up the NBA draft from 2023. Didn't want to do the last one because It hasn't even been a full year yet, so we don't really know. But let's look at this one. So the Miami Heat at 18 draft Jaime Jaquez Jr., who's not a terrific player, but he's played, he started games for the Miami Heat. He can give you 10 points a night. At 19, the Warriors get Brandon Podziemski. He's currently starting. He's actually one of the hottest players in the NBA right now. The Houston Rockets get Cam Whitmore at 20. He's had some really big nights. Chris Murray at 23 starts for the Blazers. Ben Shepherd at 26 is like the 8th man in the Pacers rotation. Julian Strawther at 29. He's in the Nuggets rotation. It's these contenders who spot the guys that, again, we're not looking at you to change our franchise, but we believe you can come in and play a role that we have available for you.
Didn't Jaime Jaquez have some relations with a coach's wife or something?
I believe there's a rumor that he is sleeping with his coach's ex-wife, Spoelstra's ex-wife.
It's interesting. Good for him. I mean, good for him.
I mean, it would make sense why he's been out of the rotation recently, but
good for Jaime. Anyways, Grant, we ready to put a bow on college basketball, our one shining moment from the season?
Yeah, let's go from the amateurs to the pros.
I will say, UConn national champs in 2026.
National champs of right now. Shout out to Gino. Shout out to Paige. They got it. They won by 30.
Oh, we didn't even talk about the woman. Yeah, South Carolina's a joke. Dawn Staley, she got punched in the freaking mouth, and I loved every second of it. It was great.
Yeah, I mean, you're a UConn fan. You've just been spoiled these last few years.
Well, but honestly, I don't want to spend too much time on the UConn Huskies because there's nothing to talk about. They were just that dominant. But if anyone looked at that South Carolina team and said they can beat UConn, you are insane. Because I'm watching South Carolina. I don't even know who their star is. They have none. And Dawn Staley before the game, oh, well, you got to prepare for 5 of us. 5 of you guys. Half your team should be playing Division III basketball. That's what UConn made you look like. So go Huskies.
I mean, that UConn team was stacked, though.
And they found their groove at the right time. Like Sarah Strong came alive late, later in the season. Like they started meshing well. Even Jenna Alfie against the UCLA girl, Lauren Betts. Like Betts didn't know what hit her. She punched her right in the mouth. I didn't think Jana had that in her. Watching her in the early games, I thought she was Alex Condon 2.0. She comes out and steps up big. Like this Husky team, shout out to the girls.
It's so crazy to me that they win a national championship and then it's 1 week later. We're at the WNBA draft.
Well, did you see like BR posted something with Paige having the net around her? Like she had the net around her dress, like her fit from the NBA draft or the WNBA draft. And it's like, it was an interesting tweet. It was like Paige wearing the net to the WNBA draft. And I think they meant like she's just going to wear it all week kind of thing. But like a lot of people thought the WNBA draft was last night in the replies. And I'm like, there's no chance the WNBA scheduled their draft the night of the men's national championship. Even a week later, it's crazy. And then they go right into playing basically. It's a long season.
You remember when Caitlin Clark had like a terrible start for not terrible, but it was inefficient. She was shooting like 20-something% from 3. It's like, how am I supposed to blame her? She had a whole off season of training, senior year, deep run, goes through regular season, conference tournament, wins that to the national championship, draft right into the WNBA season. Where's the time?
No, it's low key crazy too how much everyone hated Caitlin Clark, like the media. Like
she's becoming a villain again now. Have you seen that? Because Page won, they're bringing up all these women's college basketball icons, and they're all talking about how Caitlin Clark is the outlier because she didn't win anything and like she's trash.
Bro, like they would be flying Southwest Airlines to games if Caitlin Clark was not in the league. And I'm sorry to say that, but that is 100% the truth. Like, you got Angel Reese out there complaining about salary. Like we should make as much as the men. No, because the men bring in more. But with that being said, if Caitlin Clark wasn't in the league, the WNBA would not be a thing. It would not be what it is. It's starting to make some gains because of Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, 100%. If Angel Reese wants to be paid like the men, then she better become Caitlin Clark's biggest fan.
Did you see on First Take? And I know we're getting a little off topic here, but did you see on First Take, the clip I'm talking about where Molly is talking about the rev share? Like she was talking about the way the WNBA should be paid with like a rev share model.
I didn't see it. No,
I don't want to speak out of tone here because I don't exactly remember the full clip of what she said, but I think she made the case that like WNBA should be paid by like the rev share and thinking that they were actually going to make more. And then like people were doing the math. And if you went off rev share between like the NBA and WNBA, they would actually make less than they do now.
I believe it.
Yeah. So Molly was
The WNBA was losing hundreds of millions of dollars for years.
Yeah, like, and that's the thing. Why are we villainizing the chosen one? I don't know why Caitlin Clark was the chosen one, but I'll sure as hell tell you this: Paige Beckers, as great as Paige is, does not even have half the pop that Caitlin Clark has. Nobody cared about the women's tournament this year. Not nobody, but a lot less people cared about the women's tournament this year. And this is like Gino on a big run with Paige Beckers, like the Cinderella storyline, winning in your senior year after the ACL injury, and you're a 3-time player there. Nobody cared.
And keep in mind, South Carolina isn't necessarily, I don't know how marketable they are, but they are like the current dynasty. You know, they're there in the national championship every single year.
So, I'm watching the broadcast and it's like South Carolina's going for 3 of the past 4, right? And back to back or something like that. And I'm like, it doesn't even feel like South Carolina won last year. I don't even remember them winning. I just remember Caitlin Clark.
And to everybody who might be new on this channel, Tanner and I watch the WNBA. We watch women's college basketball. We are fans of the sport. We are not shitting on them. It's just simple financial analysis. Whatever brings you, you are what you make.
I'm not the biggest WNBA fan. I do like women's college basketball in the tournament because I'm a UConn fan, but I sure as hell would have probably never turned WNBA on if it wasn't for Caitlin Clark. Or if they didn't play, the Connecticut Sun wasn't in.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you didn't go to the Mohegan,
if they didn't play at the casino, I probably would never turn it on. But Caitlin Clark made me turn it on. Like Caitlin Clark is the golden child, and she's the one that's pushing the league forward, and she gets shit on for doing that, and I just don't understand it. And Dave Portnoy, this is the last thing we can say, but Dave Portnoy shared a tweet. I think last year Caitlin Clark had like 18 million people watching the championship. This year it was like 9 million. So they took a 50% cut because Caitlin Clark wasn't in it. And I am seeing the stuff about how the class of 2020, 4 of the 5 top recruits had national championship. Caitlin Clark's the one outlier. Well, you make the argument Caitlin Clark's done a lot more for the sport than any of those other girls there. And also, too, she went to Iowa. She didn't go to a UConn. If Caitlin Clark was at a UConn with Paige, they would have won a national title. There's no doubt about it. But she went to Iowa. So,
yeah, got nothing to add. NBA.
Grant, this Lakers win, meaningless. I mean, OKC's in first place. They're going to be the 1 seed. I don't think they need to really get up for a game against LA. So I'd calm down a little bit with how excited you're getting over it.
Well, I could not disagree more. The OKC played all of their guys. They had something to prove in the sense that the only time they played the Lakers this year, I want to say, was in November. And that was obviously the Anthony Davis team. LeBron might not have even played in that game. Basically, there's no history between these two teams as currently assembled. Luka knocked the Thunder out of the playoffs last year. I want to actually look at the Thunder's upcoming schedule. So the Lakers, their next games are against the Suns, Jazz, and Pelicans. So the Lakers are the last good team you're going to face. And then you're basically going to get like a week and a half off to prepare for the playoffs. So you want to have a good showing in your last game against a good team. You want to prove yourself against an experienced team, because that's one of people's biggest concerns about the Thunders, their youth and their inexperience. Well, you want to go out there and prove yourselves. You also just lost by a lot to the Houston Rockets. They lost by like 14 in the final score, but they were down by 30 points in that game. And that does not happen to the Thunder. They'd only lost like, I think, 2 games all year by more than 14 points. And then the Lakers go out there and they just slaughter them. And yes, the Lakers shot extremely above what they're expected to from 3, but they were open shots and they held the Thunder under 100 points. Put those together, and I take this to mean everything. I do.
Well, when you say the open looks from 3, I go back to the last Celtics game against the Thunder. The Celtics shot very poorly from 3. They were all open looks. They were well under their expected shooting value from 3. They're going to be better. And if they make some of those looks, they would have beaten the Thunder too. So it's hard. I think it's a little different too, because I'm comparing this to like the Celtics, where if they play the Cleveland Cavaliers or the New York Knicks or even the Thunder, and they already clinched the 1 or the 2 seed, maybe it's a little harder to get up for them because they know they can turn it on. They just did it last year. But in this case, too, I still think if you're the Thunder, it's a little harder to turn it on in this spot. Like maybe you're just losing focus end of season. You're getting tired. You have a great record. Obviously, you're going to be a 1 seed. And now you got to go and play these really good teams that are still trying to go out and hunt a little bit and pick up some momentum. I do have my fears about the Thunder. I don't think the Thunder should be the favorites to win the NBA championship right now because they haven't necessarily done it. Now they have one of the best teams in basketball, but at the same time, too, when you're looking at these games, they're meaningless for the Thunder and they're more meaningful for the Rockets and the Lakers. Now, with that being said, these are games, if you're the Rockets and the Lakers, you're going to look to when you get into the postseason and say, hey, we did it here. We could do it once again. And that's dangerous for the Thunder coming into those games.
So I apologize for if you could hear any clicking. I wanted to look up some numbers because you mentioned, well, I mentioned the open shots. You mentioned the open shots against the Celtics. I wanted to see if that was a recurring theme for the Thunder recently. And why I want to look at this is the Thunder have put so much effort into having the best defense in the NBA. And they've gone 11, 12 guys deep. I think they've done a very good job balancing their guys' minutes. But they also haven't really suffered many injuries. So although they have been staggering those minutes, it's still a lot of wear and tear on the bodies. And mentally, physically, as the season draws on, it's harder just to sustain that level of effort. So over the last month of play, and it's funny because the Thunder and the Lakers are basically right next to each other. Over the last month of play, the Lakers have conceded the 8th highest percent of open shots, and the Thunder have conceded the 10th highest percent. Now, with the Lakers, you can say LeBron was injured. They sat their guys. They had that stretch where they played, I think, like 11 games in 14 days. So you can kind of point to that. With the Thunder, it's like, okay, if you're the best defense in the NBA, but you're bottom 10 as far as open shots allowed, maybe this is a sign that they are starting to wear down, or maybe it is what you said, and they're just waiting for the playoffs to turn it back on again.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see. And we're not going to know with the Thunder. That's the thing. We saw them have an early exit from the postseason last year. They haven't necessarily proven anything in the playoffs. They're a great regular season team right now, but we don't know how they're going to perform in the playoffs. And that would be my fear of betting them to win anything right now, especially being minus 150 to win the West. We talked about it. There's teams that can give them a game, how they match up. If the Thunder play their best basketball, obviously, they're going to go out and win those series, but the Lakers match up well. We thought the Nuggets were going to be a team that matches up well. Golden State, they have the talent, they have the experience. So there's a lot of issues in the West, I think, for the Thunder, and that minus 150 to win the conference right now doesn't necessarily reflect how difficult it's going to be for them to get to the finals.
Yeah, the Thunder statistically, I don't want to call them an anomaly because they've had an incredible season, but they currently have the highest point differential in NBA history. And they're tied for the most double-digit wins in a single season with 50. If you look at the actual breakdown of their results, and I'm going to try to remember these teams. It's hard. I'm going to do my best. But I believe if you look at their record against the Rockets, the Lakers, the Warriors, the Timberwolves, the Nuggets, and there's one other team, maybe the Mavericks. If you look at their record against those teams, they're 10-12. They're like, what would they be? What's their current record? They would be 54-2 against the rest of the NBA. So they beat every team they should beat, and they dominate the Eastern Conference. I think their only loss might be to the Celtics.
Celtics lost both to them this year.
It was the Cavaliers. That's who it was. Their only loss was that game in Cleveland against the Cavaliers. When it comes to playing the contenders in the West, they're a below 500 team. They are a losing team. And we've seen this team not really be in many big spots, but in the ones they have been in, it was that second round series against the Mavericks last year, which they lost in 6 games. And Luka was injured in that series, still dominated them. And then it was the in-season tournament final this year against the Bucks, a Bucks team that is not that good. And they lost by nearly 20 points.
What's going to happen when SGA doesn't get foul calls in the playoffs? What's going to happen when they let the boys play a little bit?
So that's another big thing to point at. In this game against the Lakers, he didn't shoot a free throw. It was the first time in 3-4 years or so. He finished that game with 21 points, and they were down by 30 for most of the game.
Yeah, if you just don't foul him, which is very difficult to do because he's a great foul artist. If you don't foul him, that takes a whole element of their game away. So I think there's a lot of ways they can win. I look at the Celtics series. If the Celtics ultimately do get to the finals and they matched up against the Thunder, there were a lot of open looks from three that I guarantee they're not going to miss over the course of a 7-game series. There's teams that do match up well against the Thunder, and the fact that their odds are where they're at right now, and it's based on what they've done this season. I would be concerned because that's a team that hasn't necessarily done it. And we saw with the Celtics, it took them a very long time to get ultimately to the top of basketball. It took a lot of trials and tribulations, and there were good Celtics teams that were favored to win titles, but it took time because you got to mesh and you got to get that experience in the postseason, and the Thunder don't have it right now.
That year, I'm trying to remember when Jason Tatum was drafted. I think might have been in 17 or 18. I can remember, the memes about 2018 LeBron, and it was like him just playing 1-on-5 every game. That was the year where they played the Celtics in the conference finals, and he hit Tatum dunked on him at the start of game 6, and then LeBron hit the 2 threes in his face late in the game. I think that was Tatum's sophomore year. Point being, that was 2018, and we have those memories of Tatum being in the conference finals, Brown being in the conference finals, and it took them until 2024 to finally get there. If the Thunder were to win it all this year, they would be the youngest team in NBA history. They're the second youngest 1 seed in NBA history. The youngest was the Thunder last year. We want everything to be accelerated, but it's just not something that's realistic in this day and age of sports.
No, it takes time. And the Celtics are a prime example. Like, the Thunder will get there. They will likely win a title. But the Celtics went through a point where they were going to trade Jaylen Brown away because they didn't think that marriage was going to work in order to winning a title. Now, if you said, hey, we're going to trade Jaylen Brown, you'd be looked at like a crazy person. So I don't think the Thunder are there yet. They might get to the finals. They might get to the Western Conference Finals. They might lose in the playoffs. I'm not really sure what's going to happen because we just don't have enough data to say, hey, this team's going to get it done. All we have is an early exit from the postseason, and they're the youngest team ever, and that doesn't necessarily work in the course of history. But right now, Grant, I think the Lakers are dangerous because they have Luka, they have LeBron, they have my guy, Austin Reeves. I think the Nuggets are going to find a way to figure it out a little bit more than they have in this bad stretch. And I think the Golden State Warriors are pretty deadly. And you know what? Can't count out the Houston Rockets either. They're a 2 seed for a reason. Odds wise, they're not in it necessarily, but you can't count them out.
With everything we just said, what do you think the spread of tonight's Lakers Thunder game is? They're rematching 2 days later. What do you think it is?
Luka healthy though. I think that's the
so pretty much the entire Lakers team is listed as questionable on the injury report, but they all have prop odds available. So I would assume the sports books are still thinking they're going to play.
I think it's like 10.
It's 14.5.
Wow. After
the Lakers just beat them by 27.
Good team, bounce back. What was the spread when they won by 27?
Let me see if I can get that for you real quick because I don't actually know. It was 9.5.
All right, so this is not a back-to-back, or is? I didn't see.
It's not a back-to-back, but both games were in OKC.
So I think depending on the injury report, that's going to change a little bit if guys are confirmed in. Just because they have props does not mean that they're going to play. Right. But it's probably going to be right around 11, 12 if it closes and everyone's playing, just coming off the fact that, the Thunder lost. They've lost a couple of games in a row. They haven't necessarily looked good. Like, this is a good bounce back spot for them. Like, the young guys hopefully wake up tonight. So I can see it. I would probably lean towards the Lakers with that many points, especially because the Lakers, too, they have not clinched the 3 seed. That's another thing in the West. Now, it looks like they're on pace to clinch the 3 seed, but they haven't got it yet. Only the Thunder and the Rockets have clinched playoff spots and positioning right now.
Yeah, so it actually does bring up an interesting question for the Lakers if they should rest their guys tonight. They need to go 2-2 down the stretch to secure the 3 seed. It's possible they go 1-3 and they still get the 3 depending on what happens below them. But they've got 4 games left. They got at OKC, at Dallas, so Luka's homecoming, and obviously Anthony Davis against the Lakers. They host the Rockets, and then they go to at Portland. So me personally, I'm thinking the Mavericks is almost a guaranteed win there. just because I don't see Luka losing in his return to Dallas. And I think the Dallas fans are going to be on his side. Like, they'll be cheering for him if he's going off. So then if you rest your guys against the Thunder and say, look, we just got to beat Houston or Portland, I could see that happening. I guess while you're hot, maybe you try to strike while you're hot and, say, let's really try to break the will of the Thunder. But if you do that and you lose tonight, well, now you're tired. You've got a back-to-back tomorrow against the Mavericks, and maybe that's not a guaranteed win anymore.
I think it's just 3 games in 4 days. Knowing where they're at, I think they rest their starters. That's as much of, I think, a mental advantage over the Thunder that you can get to. I mean, you could go out and play all your guys tonight and find a way to win. But if you rest them and say, hey, we're conceding this game, it is what it is. But we already beat you. Our starters just beat you. So we're going to see again the postseason. And then you play hard tomorrow night against the Mavericks. That's a win. Then you got to win one of the next 2. I think that's probably the better plan of attack here, because it's going to be hard to beat the Thunder back-to-back nights. And you know what? You almost don't want to blow everything in this game, beat the Thunder, and then you're really beat up down the stretch for those last 3. You also want to have a good showing against Dallas. I would probably rest starters tonight, especially with the playoffs coming up, because they've proven everything they needed to. They already found a way to win. Don't go in and have a bad showing with the starters, carry that into Dallas, and then give the Thunder some, motivation and momentum coming into a potential playoff series.
This is be the last thing I say about this, but these Western Conference standings, if you're listening to this or watching this, whatever, and you have not looked at the conference standings, go do it. The Clippers, the Warriors, the Timberwolves, and the Grizzlies, teams 5, 6, 7, 8, all have the exact same record. And the Denver Nuggets, who are the 4 seed, are only a half game ahead of them. The Lakers separated a little bit. They're 2 games clear, but they are still in that mix. The 8 seed could finish as the 3. The 3 could finish as the 8. I cannot remember seeing the standings this close, especially with the implementation of the play-in tournament, because 10 years ago, like, if you were the 6 or the 8, it wouldn't have mattered a whole lot. You were still probably going to lose in the first round. You were going to be on the road, whatever, blah, blah, blah. The difference between being the 6 now and being the 8 and getting to avoid that play-in and get more rest is huge. And I just can't remember ever seeing this.
Yeah, for sure. Now, guys, we got a lot of fun stuff coming up in the next episode in the coming weeks. We have NBA playoffs. We have the NFL draft. Got a lot of great things. But before we finish the show, Grant, I want to ask you a question. Just NBA outlook moving forward right now. Do the Thunder get to the Western Conference Finals? And if they get to the Western Conference Finals, well, they're probably going to the Western Conference Finals. Let me rephrase that. Do the Thunder get to the NBA Finals? And if they do, are they winning a championship if they get there?
I would have to say no to both. The Thunder are an excellent team, and I've recently had this mental battle with myself, which is, we only haven't seen things until we see them. So it's easy for us to say the Thunder are so young and inexperienced, blah, 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 blah. Well, just last year, we were saying the Celtics always choke. They always get there, and they never have the clutch gene. They never have that killer will. They'll never get over the hump, and then they did it. Giannis is he's not as evolved as these other superstars. He can't shoot, all this, blah, blah, blah. He injures his knee and still drops 50 and 14 to win the NBA Finals. We see it with everybody. A player as small as Steph Curry, he can't be the best player on your team. You can't win with a guy like that being your number 1. And then they form a dynasty. So I don't want to discount the Thunder because of that. The reason I will discount them is I think as far as 1 to 12, I think they're clearly the best team in the NBA. They've got so much depth. Everybody contributes. They've got a smart coach. They defend, they shoot, they rebound, they pass, they do everything you want. But they're 1 through 7. I like the Lakers 1 through 7 better. I like the Celtics 1 through 7 better. If the Nuggets figure it out, because they look like crap right now, but if they get back to playing their best, I probably like their 1 through 7 better. And that's what the playoffs are about. Depth is not something that wins you the NBA Finals. Depth wins you regular season games. It doesn't get you through a playoff bracket. And that's what I think they're going to learn this year. And Jalen Williams is awesome. I think I love him. There's nothing to dislike about him. But if the Thunder really, really want to win a championship, they might have to mortgage him for a couple of years of Kevin Durant or some other superstar. Maybe it's not Durant, maybe it's someone younger. Point being, go get a legit 30-point per game scorer, pair him up with Shea, and maybe that's how you win a title.
Yeah, my biggest fear with OKC, just looking over the course of history, inexperience doesn't necessarily win the postseason. It's going to take time. They have not done anything in the postseason to this date. The open threes are a concern because I've seen it with the Celtics. I've seen it with the Lakers, right? These teams have the chance to hit these open threes. And then also, is Shea going to get the calls in the playoffs? If he doesn't, that takes away a huge element of their game. So that would be my biggest fear with the Thunder coming into it. Again, I think they are the best team in the NBA right now. But when you just look at the odds don't match where I think they need to be. I would think, if they're minus 150 to win the conference right now, and they got some tough playoff series coming up, where like with the Celtics being minus 150, they're in the Eastern Conference Finals. You already know it's already a case. Same thing with Cleveland, right? But with the Thunder, they had the early exit last year, and they haven't proven that they can get to the next level. So I can't necessarily see taking them minus 150 right now. Lakers plus 650, great value. Warriors 8-1, great value. I think Nuggets even 9-1 if they can figure it out. Better value than taking the Thunder minus 150 when you just don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah, betting a future at minus 150 is criminal. Don't do that.
It depends. Like if you could have got the UConn women at minus 150, which they were at one point, yeah, but not.
Yeah, college sports and women's college sports specifically are so different. I mean, I think we talked about this on a show. The difference between a 1 seed and a 4 seed might as well be a 1 and a 16.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the thing with UConn. Like if you bet UConn to win a national title at 3-1 or 4-1 before the tournament, they're in the at least Elite Eight, at least. Where you can't say that about the NBA or even men's college basketball this year. Maybe a little different story with the 1 seeds. But anyways, Grant, that was Ride the Line for April 8th. Big day, big show, and we're moving forward with big shows. So make sure you smash that subscribe button right now.
Absolutely, guys. Like Tanner said, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button as well. Jump in the comments. Let us know, did Florida win or did Houston lose? Also, let us know, are the Lakers, the Thunder, the Nuggets, whoever it is, who's the team to watch out in the Western Conference? We will be back with a new episode soon, so make sure you are locked in. And until next time, we will catch you all on the next episode of Ride the Line.